Hi folks, Harry, Aurora King here. So today I'm going to be talking about a book that I just finished last night actually. So I'm making this video very quickly after finishing this book because it's now actually in my top 3 Stephen King books of all time. And that is 11/22/63. This, I don't even have words to describe how good this book is. It's just incredible. It's very different to what Stephen King would usually write, because it is not horror at all, it's not thriller, it's not suspense. I mean, maybe it is a little bit suspense, but it's more science fiction over any other genre. So it's very different to what Stephen King usually writes, but it just proves that he's very good at breaking from the stereotype of the spooky clown man who only writes horror books. Because Stephen King is one of the most misunderstood authors ever, and a lot of people just pin him down as the guy who writes horror books, but he writes so much more than that. This book is just the perfect example of how talented Stephen King is, because it's just a masterpiece. Absolute bloody masterpiece. So this book is about an English teacher in Maine in 2011 called Jake Epping, and he discovers a portal that will take him back in time to 1958. And he uses this portal to his advantage in an attempt to prevent the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. And because the portal takes him to the year 1958, he has to live out his life in the past for 5 years before he can attempt to prevent this assassination. So yeah, this book is in no way scary, it's just brilliant. Like, this book is 740 pages long. I'm pretty sure the original hardcover was about 1,000 pages long. So yeah, it's a massive book. I think it took me about a month to read this, which I'm very ashamed of actually. I read the first, I think, 130 pages in one sitting. Then I had a break from it for about 4 weeks, which is really strange. I don't usually do that. I had a massive reading slump and I am not proud of it. But last weekend I picked it up, read about 500 pages in one day and loved it. It got to about page 600, and last night I just decided to finish the whole thing, and I'm so glad that I did, because I think the last 150 pages of this book made my heart race, probably quicker than my heart has ever raced before. It's so brilliant and thrilling. I just absolutely love it. I rated it 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. I honestly can't find a fault with this book, because for a short period of time, Stephen King's books seemed very bloated and included a lot of unnecessary information. But 11/22/63 is a really long book, but there is nothing that I would cut from this book. It's been perfectly edited as well. Every single page of this, I just absolutely adored it. As a fellow British person, I thought that I wouldn't be massively interested in this book because I've never learned about American history, I've never been interested in American history, so I thought that a book about preventing the assassination of JFK would be very unfamiliar to me, which it was. This book is so much more than preventing the assassination of an American president. I'm not a massive fan of love stories in books, but this book just did it perfectly. The relationship between Jake and Sadie, it's just brilliant. And Stephen King is so talented when it comes to writing outside of the horror genre as well. Of course, he is most known for his horror work, because that's what he's written the most of, he's most famous for it. But this book needs a lot more recognition because it's one of his more recent works, and often Stephen King's more recent books, say after 2005, Stephen King's books are often overlooked, pardon the pun. Stephen King's newer work is just phenomenal. So many people say, oh, new Stephen King is bad, I prefer his old stuff. And that's okay if you prefer his old stuff, but people need to give his newer books a chance, because books like 11/22/63, The Institute, the Mr. Mercedes trilogy, they're all absolutely phenomenal, and they just get massively overlooked. And they shouldn't, because they're so good. So in my first video ever, my review of The Institute, I talked about character development and how in his older works, whenever a new character was introduced to the story, Stephen King was going to develop them. He was going to give them a backstory, and you would know very gradually like who this person is and how they got to become the person that they are. And in Stephen King's newer work, he prefers to tighten the narrative and very subtly make it quite obvious who his characters are. So you don't get that much backstory, you just get a brilliant first impression of them. And 11/22/63 is probably the best example of new Stephen King creating brilliant character development, because his new works, the characters in it are nowhere near as developed as they were in his older works, because naturally he would make his characters more developed. He would give them a backstory, he'd give them everything, so we would know everything about them. And in his newer works, he tightens the narrative and makes it very clear who the characters are, just in a very different way. This book gives them backstory, but in a very more concise way. This book doesn't give them backstory, but you immediately know who the characters are within the first 2 pages of meeting them. And that's what I love about this book. Honestly, at this point, I am lost for words with how brilliant this book is. I could go on and on and on about how amazing this book is. I was not expecting to enjoy this book as much as I did, because, as I said, I've never learned about American history, it's never interested me. This book has so many more layers to it, I just absolutely love it. This book is just, oh my god, it's so good. I can't say anything else other than it's just absolutely brilliant. And I think everyone should read it, because some people are hesitant to read Stephen King because they don't like horror, or they're just intimidated by long books, which I completely understand. I get intimidated by long books. I put off reading The Stand for quite a while actually, and then I read it, it was brilliant. But this book, you don't even feel how long it is. This is classified as a big book. Personally, I classify big books as books over 650 pages. Anything past that, to me, it's the big book. And this book is 740 pages. And it's just, you don't feel how long this book is. It just flies by. But yeah, I was not expecting to love this book as much as I did. It's phenomenal, 5 out of 5 stars. I think everyone should read it. Okay, so that was my review of Stephen King's 2011 standalone novel, 11/22/63. So if you enjoyed the video, please drop a like, comment below some video suggestions, because I'm all ears, and also subscribe to my channel. It's free, why don't you do it? Do it. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Bye! Oh my god.